Good morning. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting for the 7th of October. I start the agenda with apologies for absence. We have one apology for absence, I think, or is it two?
Two. We have apologies from Councillor Curtis and Councillor Wally-Hoggins.
Thank you very much. And then disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest for today? Councillor Coucher.
I must declare an interest on item 7 in that my son will become the Chief Executive of WRCC in December. I have no influence over that matter at this point in time, and I think I can make some comments about that particular item, but I need to declare that interest.
Thank you very much indeed. The next item are the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of December. We have to propose and second that those minutes are accepted, but are there any questions to be raised on those minutes before I call for that? No questions? Nothing? Nobody wants to raise anything? Oh, okay. Are we having somebody that will propose? Councillor Coles? And Councillor Grocott seconds that the minutes are accepted. Thank you very much. And moving on then, Part A, matters to be referred to Council. The first one comes within the Housing and Customer Service portfolio, and it is the notice of motion on tackling food insecurity and promoting food justice. Response to the notice of motion. Councillor Coles, do you want to introduce this?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is in response to the notice of motion brought by Councillor Pertigale and Councillor Petrovic in February 24. There has been much over recent years that has exacerbated food poverty and household food insecurity, including COVID-19 and the cost of living crisis. I think anyone who has read, of course everybody here, but anybody looking at this report will see that the data provided shows quite a shocking picture in terms of the impact of these things on our society and on our residents in the district. The right to adequate food is a human right, and protecting the right of people to live in dignity, free from hunger, free from food insecurity and malnutrition is important. We have to this implies that sufficient food is available, people have the means to access it, and that it adequately meets dietary needs. The response that we are producing today is the result of an extremely thorough piece of work by one of our officers, Nick Cadd, and it is extremely useful in detailing the work we're already doing with food banks and the work we're doing under our Growing Opportunities Plan, and we are also working closely with other agencies such as the County Council in respect of their responsibility to deliver food security, the food strategy. There is an opportunity to develop this work. There is an opportunity to identify where there are gaps and things done, and there's an opportunity to work with other partners to support and broadcast at the work they're doing. We don't intend to duplicate work that is already being done by agencies and organisations already. Our plan for the District Council plan for 23-27 recognises the importance of healthy communities in many of its aims and objectives. I would ask you to support this recommendation, and I would ask you to also note that it is not just food security that is the quality and security of food and the ability to afford food, which is a human right, I think, is also impacted by things like the rise in rents, rise in energy. If we note the rise in the number of food parcels delivered in the district since 22, 36% rise, and I would advise everybody to have a really good dig into the statistics on this report. So yes, I would ask that you support the recommendations in this to Council.
Thank you. I don't know if there's anything anybody wants to add to that, but I found the appendices particularly useful. Because the original notice of motion was looking at national figures, but you were able to bring that down to our level at the district. Worthy of note was the significant proportion of parcels being provided to feed children, for example, which was part of the report. And the graph in Appendix 4 is quite clear about seeing the rise in number of people accessing the food banks within this area, which is considered to be one of the better off areas of the country, and yet we're having that, seeing some of those statistics. I think it's something that is across the country, but it is noticeable in our district that we're also having the impact. And at the same time, we're also seeing rises in households suffering from fuel poverty, households suffering from increased illnesses, and it's across the piece, not only young children, but it's also older people as well. So thank you for the report. One of the things that we will have to make a decision on is not only accepting this notice of motion, but we've always financially supported the provision, the support for the 4 district food banks, and that's one of the things we will be considering in our budgets, whether that support will carry on as well. And it just clearly seems that the need is there. Councillor Passingham, were you wanting to say anything at this point?
Yeah, we fully support the original motion, and I do think it's an excellent report that's been produced, but I have got a couple of questions. One is, it talks about local food growing quite a lot, and a note that the District Council has been talking to Warwick University Crop Science Department about micro projects. Presumably that means market garden type organisations and companies, which there's quite a dearth of in the area, and or is it 50% at least of our fruit and veg comes from abroad now? So in terms of local food security, air miles and all the rest of it, it'd be good to encourage more local food growing. So just wondered, as a result of these micro projects, would there be funding to train people in market gardening and growing food? I mean, we have Morrell as a local agricultural college, but I noticed that the Rural England Prosperity Fund, I don't know if there's any money left from that, but it would be an ideal sort of project for the rural industry, Rural England Prosperity Fund. But I have got another question as well, but it'd be interesting to see if there's any
yes, I mean, this is something that certainly I forwarded to the relevant officers, the request that came from the people at the Crop Centre, who raised it at the Climate Assembly, actually, and I've met them since. And I do know that there's been increased, allotments have become increasingly popular, and there's been inclusions of allotments in new developments as a result of that. And it's in the paper's work about Mearn Vale, Fernley Park, Shackleton Village, Upper Lighthorn, having those kind of that work done. And I know that in my town of Ulster there is a community orchard, and there's been increased awareness there. But on the specific points, I don't know if the officers can say more about how we are able to, using the local plan, for example, and also the whether or not we're able to develop, more kind of project work, given the. Nick Cadder is able to respond to the particular part, and I don't know whether there's any other officer able to come in at that point.
Sorry. Thanks. Well, in terms of the research, yes, we're engaged with the research, as is the county team. So rest assured that we're engaged with that and supportive of it. It says in the report. In terms of this sort of development of kind of micro opportunities for people to grow their own food, there is a significant amount in the current local plan, and the revised South Warwickshire local plan is considering that as part of its development journey. And it's a combination of factors: planning policy, community willingness, geographic opportunity, skill set and training, as you allude to. And I think what we've suggested in the report is that we will try and consider those issues in the round as part of the development of the next stage of the Growing Opportunities Plan, to ensure that we have a kind of evidence-based and well-designed approach that doesn't see us acting in isolation of those other policies, if that makes sense. So, in response to your first question, yes, it is being considered, and as the next iteration of the Go Plan comes into life during 2025, it will be woven into that.
And I'll bring John Kerford in at this point.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Mr. Cadd, we're exploring what we can do in the local plan. There's sort of two strands to that. One is around open space, which where allotments and community orchards come into play. The other is around the use of land per se, agricultural land, and I think it's particularly pertinent in the context of climate change and what impact that might have on the crops we're growing. So, it's relatively early days there, but we are looking at that. So, just give members some comfort on that. Regarding SPF, rural England, I don't know, but I'll take that away. I don't know if Ms. Perks knows specifically, but if not, we'll see if there is any opportunity there. What we still don't know from the government is whether whether the funding is continuing, and that will be, I understand from the budget, we'll get some certainty there. But I think it's certainly something, if we can explore it, we will. Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else that anybody wants to raise? Did you want to raise another question at this point?
Just a quick one. And you mentioned community orchards, and as I've said before, I think I mentioned that for 10 years there was a tree warden scheme that finished about 10 years ago, but it did some really good work, and every year the district council used to offer parish councils trees to plant. Generally it was 100 whips or 10 semi-standard trees, usually fruit trees, and I know a lot of the villages actually planted the fruit trees and did their own mini orchards. I know around our village we planted lots of plum trees, and we have a fantastic harvest of plums every year that people just go and pick. So I just wondered, it's comparatively low cost to offer parish councils free trees to plant, and I think at the time only about 40 of the 113 parishes actually took up these offers. So there's probably a lot of parish councils that haven't planted every square inch of their open spaces with fruit trees. So I just wondered if that's something to be considered.
Thank you for that. I know we do trees for farmers, and that is continuing, where we're offering free trees for farmers, and that is continuing this year. But it's a good point, well made. We have the recommendations, and this notice of motion will go to the council for final decision. So we don't need to second, we do need to propose and second. Councillor Coles, are you willing to propose the recommendations to go to council? And Councillor Gist will second, and it will move on to council, and the final decision will be taken at council. But the recommendations are quite clear on page 7 that we support. Is that all agreed by everybody?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. The next item, it comes under the Planning and Economic Development portfolio and the Housing and Customer Services portfolio, and it's a shared responsibility because it covers Housing Strategy Action Plan and delivering local needs. There's 2 items that are coming that they cover homes and crossover onto planning. So who wants to introduce this one as the first one?
Missed item 5.
Yeah, Oh, sorry, item 5, yes. My apologies, I'm not, can't read it. The second one comes under me, which is perhaps that's why I overlooked it. No, it comes to me, which is about the progress monitoring report on the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan, pages 65 to 76. And it's to look at the monitoring report once we had the the peer review done. It was a good peer review, but they did come up with a few recommendations about how we might get even better. And the report is covering those recommendations and what we have done so far on it and where we might progress. So I will kick off by saying that I will propose it, but I'm willing to take any questions on it from any councillor that is on the Cabinet. Councillor, would you like to have a counter?
Thank you. I think it's a very useful report, this, because it kind of summarises where we are on a whole variety of areas. There are 2 areas, I think, which is particularly important, I think, in my areas of responsibility. Clearly, we've put together a stakeholders working group, which is mentioned, I think, in the first recommendation. I think it would be very helpful, I think, if all members knew exactly who was going to be on that working group and how that was going to operate, because I think that's going to be obviously a very important body. The second matter, which I believe is, I think, with my colleague Councillor Gist at the moment, which is basically how we're going to be working with local parish councils and the forum that's going to be set up in relation to that. I think that's extremely important for this council to be working constructively with our town and parish councils. And I think it's really important that all members are kept informed of how we're going to do that and see what the timescale is for it actually actioning. Thank you.
It would be very useful to find out more about the Cabinet for the Parish Councils Forum. Are you able to update us, Councillor Gist?
Well, I'm meeting with Head of Law and Governance and the Democratic Services Manager tomorrow to sort of kick that off. So hopefully we'll be able to come back to you with some more information.
And we have strengthened the citizens panel. I understand that is that is a work in progress. Any queries, anything to correspond and respond to Councillor Couch's point about the changing, making sure that that everything is strengthened.
I can respond to that if you like, Councillor Junid. As I've said to the Overview Scrutiny Committee, I put together a draft of people I think we should be engaging with in this sort of creating this place-based vision plan. I'm very keen that it sort of runs sort of alongside and complements the South Warwickshire local plan process. I think that sets out our intentions. I think the time to launch that is when we've got the preferred options out for consultation alongside that, and to sort of make sure the 2 things work together. I suggest we set this group up. I'm very happy to bring details of my scoping to the Cabinet Forum meeting for sort of further discussion, and we can bring it back to Cabinet in due course.
And the Chief Executive would like to come in at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just in response to the issue about the consultation exercise, that has come to an end with the parish councils now. We had responses from around 40 parish and town councils across the district. There does seem a willingness to engage with us through Parish Forum, but as Councillor Gist said, that's still subject to further discussion, but it was positive that we had responses from across the district. Can I just make one, whilst I've got the mic, Chair, just one final comment on page 70, oh, crikey, my eyes, page 75, the final comment in the progress talks about the communication strategy, which is on the agenda for today. It then talks about it being considered by council on the 14th. That's old news. That's been overtaken by events. Cabinet can resolve on the communication strategy today. That's not going to council. I think Councillor.
Councillor Crump, you wanted to raise some issues.
Thank you, Councillor Junid. Yes, we did discuss this and at OSC, and Mr Perks is already well ahead of the game after what we discussed about the partnership and the details and how it can strengthen relationships and partnerships. So I think that is really positive, and obviously Councillor Coucher seemed to be on the same page that we were talking about that. So I think that's quite sensible. Members were supportive of strengthening the citizens panel and obviously engaging with stakeholders, and really asked for updates in relation to this on a regular basis. We did raise the point that Mr Buckland's going to go back to the LGA because there was a bit of jargon that members of the public particularly wouldn't encourage. Co-design a compelling and long-term place-based narrative to define Stratford in the district. So we all know what that means, don't we? It rolls off the tongue. It's really snappy. So, and again, it was quite pertinent because we were talking about the communication strategy, and we've got the officers here about it, and we want clear communications that our residents can understand. And I don't think that was particularly helpful. You know, we sort of knew what it meant, but we didn't really. So, but apart from that, yes, we discussed this in quite a bit of detail, and you know, it's a positive paper. But again, we want to be involved in the process or reviewing the process as things move on, to reassure that we are working with our partners to the best of our ability to, you know, 2 and 2 making 5, rather than working on our own 1 and 1 making 1 sort of thing. So hopefully that makes sense, and thank you for that. And thank you for Mr Perks for starting the work on it already, so that's good stuff. Thank you.
And thank you very much indeed. You'll be pleased to know that when I was on a national call with members of the Local Government Association, we were actually, it was raised that there had been a positive response, and somebody was very complimentary about the performance of this council. So I take that as for the whole of the council. So we have the review and the feedback report and you know, and obviously we'll carry on with this, reviewing it and making sure that we keep up with the recommendations to improve. So the recommendation in front of you is that the position is received. Any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by a further report to the Cabinet and to the portfolio holder. Are you happy? I'm happy to propose that. Is anybody happy to second it? Councillor Coucher, thank you very much indeed. Are you all agreed? Agreed. All right, thank you very much indeed. Now moving on to the part that covers the portfolios for planning economic development portfolio and the housing and customer services portfolio. And the first one is the review of the Housing Strategy Action Plan, pages 77 to 102. To consider the revised Sustainable Homes, Sustainable Communities strategy. So if we could have a bit of background on that, and then any questions. Who wants to move on this one first? Councillor Coles?
Right, sorry, there's a swift backroom fist fight over who was going to introduce this one. It is interesting because it does cover 2 portfolios very widely. It is, as it says, it sets out what the council and its partners are doing to improve housing for local people. It has an action plan, and the action plan is extremely well laid out about what is going on where, and we can see that progress is being made, but obviously us being us, we would like to see continued progress and more progress and a bit more progress on top of that. That is not to say this isn't progress, it's just we are demanding, and we'll be continuing to work forward to address the needs for local residents and people in our district. The aims, obviously, to build sustainable and affordable homes, affordable being in the actual real living meaning of the word affordable as opposed to affordable, to improve homes, help people live independently, and to prevent homelessness and reduce the harm caused by it. And I think that we can agree those are extremely valuable and important aims, and one that we will support around the table. We have the information in here, and it is regularly reviewed and reported back to the council and then to the cabinet, so that the recommendation here, that the action plan within this report is agreed by cabinet.
I do note that there are some proposed changes to the action plan, and they are mostly covered by changes waiting for recommendations or changes from government or other authorities. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, indeed. There are going to be things that influence what we do, what we can and can't do, how we do it and how soon we do it. But obviously, those are not determined by us. We are waiting to hear what those plans are from government and changes in legislation.
We have in front of us the review of the Housing Strategy Action Plan, and the recommendation is that the revised strategy action plan detailed in the report be agreed. Councillor Pussingham, did you want to raise it before I move to the vote?
Action 11 is work with partners to improve standards of accommodation across the district. At the budget review last year, the Green Group proposed doubling the council tax on empty homes and various other things to do with empty homes, and which would obviously enable more houses to come back onto the market that are at the moment empty. But as part of that, we proposed that an officer be an additional officer in the housing department to provide private sector housing standards officer that would really be looking after and advancing things to do with damp and mould and insulation in private rented sector, because that is really the big area of issues, is private sector and bad housing. Also to administer temporary accommodation, because the turnaround of temporary accommodation takes a while because of inspecting and improving the houses that have been left by various people. And there was some other range of things that would all be improving housing stock. And I just wondered if that had been advanced or developed any more news on the situation with, first of all, doubling the council tax on empty homes, because there were issues to do with sorting out with the county council and so on. And secondly, whether you still consider that an extra private sector housing standards officer is required to help put forward these actions.
On the officer one, are you able to update on, is there any changes there at all, or is that a budget issue as well?
It would be a budget issue, and looking at how much effect someone like that could have as opposed to a different route.
And when you're working with national housing associations, which we are, it is considerably difficulty trying to raise. They are independent charitable organisations, separate arm's length organisations. But the housing working group that is currently going through the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is meant to be having that liaison with those housing associations to get a better liaison about managing homes that are damp and where there's mould. And the work that the District Council has done with grants through bodies such as Act on Energy and others to make sure that people are helped with their housing bills. And there's a considerable communication strategy ongoing now as well to make sure that people are able to claim all the benefits or grants to which they are eligible, to make sure that homes are able to be heated properly so that damp and mould does not occur. And that's available for every resident, irrespective of what kind of house they live in. So a lot of work is being done on that. I have to say, we on the communication side, one of our communications officers has been extremely good at putting some of that communication out to people to make sure that people know where to go and to help them. But it is worth speaking to the Overview and Scrutiny Task and Finish group about the relationships with housing associations as well.
The question was more about private sector, but which is an issue, and maybe it can't be answered here, but also about the doubling of the council tax, because I mean the budget review is coming up. I just wondered if we've got any more detail on whether that can be implemented next year.
It is certainly something that is being looked at, but what we're finding also is that there has been a considerable rise in sales of houses that are in the private sector, private rented sector, actually being put on the market at the moment. They are not, the median rent rises have increased. Most of the ones that are in the private sector market are not in the affordable sector necessarily. But there has been quite an increase in those in private sector housing that were previously put for rent, actually been put up for sale this last year. Okay, but it is something that we will be looking further at. We have made investigations. Thank you. Moving on to the second one, which is the delivering local needs. Oh, sorry, yeah. I do need to be held to account by my chief executive. So he's noticing that I am not getting the recommendation through, so there is a proposal that the revised Sustainable Homes, Sustainable Communities strategy detailed in the report be agreed. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Coles. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Coucher. And are we all agreed on that one? And this is one that will go on, and we'll be having other reports as things develop. So thank you and all for your work on this. Thank you. And now moving on to the delivering local needs, local choice, rural housing, and that is Councillor Coucher.
Thank you. This is a really important activity that, as a district council, we have done for many years. How do we actually promote small, local housing in our villages, in particular, particularly for local needs? And this report, I think, sets out the activity that's ongoing and demonstrates that there is still a big demand for local choice housing, and the need for us to continue to work on this as vigorously as we possibly can. Certainly, there's I think a table showing housing needs surveys. There's quite a number of parishes that are not listed on that list. And I certainly would encourage all parish councils and town councils to be thinking about their local needs and to do a local needs survey. And as a district council, we can support them in terms of doing that activity. So I would really highlight that. I think the work that Sarah Brooke-Taylor does in facilitating work with parishes is to be commended. And I think this council would like to see, frankly, our success in this area increased. And I know that Councillor Coles and myself will be giving more attention to this over the next year, and how we wish to promote more schemes in more areas. And I know that some of our colleagues in other towns and villages across the district are very keen to see local schemes promoted in their areas, and we do have some money in the budget still that's uncommitted at the moment and available to help out in this area. So it's a very thorough report. I thank Renata for producing it, and I would commend this activity to the Cabinet, and obviously we would want to continue on with this approach, hopefully upping it a gear if we can. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, indeed. It is. I've been up to see what they've been doing up at Great Olne, which is one of the parishes that has done a housing needs survey and survey and has actually built local needs housing as a result. I'm just, wondering whether more parish councils can actually look at what other parish councils are doing, because sometimes you get a survey done and then you find that the parish council doesn't want to take it forward, or maybe the parish council doesn't want the survey in the first place, or the survey is perhaps looking at each other and learning from each other might be a way, and that might be something we could do under the parish forums as a potential way forward. So anyway, we have a report before us, and there is a recommendation, and that is that the continuation of the existing approach set out in the report for delivering homes for local people in rural areas is endorsed. And I'd certainly like to not only endorse it, but actually recommend the work that is being done by the Rural Housing Enabler. Considerable amount of work that is done there. So we need a proposer for that, Councillor Coucher, and a seconder, Councillor Coles. Are you all in support of that?
Yes,
yeah?
Indeed.
I think it's something that we can recommend, and it will be going forward as a proposal. Thank you very much indeed. And moving on to the resources portfolio, on this one, the councillor who is the cabinet holder, Councillor Curtis, is not here, so I'm going to take this item under my portfolio responsibility for just this one cabinet. And it is the proposed digital strategy for Stratford-on-Avon District Council, and that is for the years 2024 to 29, and it is to consider that strategy. I have been briefed, so if anybody wants to raise any questions, I'll try and see what I can do, but I also have an officer here who can answer if anybody has any particular questions. I do think it's important as part of the whole communications of this council that we do have up-to-date digital means, website, what the apps, etc. Really quite crucial. So the report is seeking approval for a 5-year digital strategy outlining how we will leverage the technologies to enhance our services, improve efficiency, and engage with residents. And I might say it's not only to engage, it's to communicate both ways. I communicate out what the council's doing, which is covered by the communication strategy, but also to allow residents to engage and support and communicate with us. So we do have anybody that wants to raise any particular queries. Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Councillor Junior. Yes, we discussed this at OSC on Friday, and I know Councillor Curtis is disappointed that we were discussing it without his attendance, but unfortunately it was in response to the Cabinet papers. So whilst we do like portfolio holders to be at meetings when we just discuss such items such as this, our timescale was limited, and we may have to ask Councillor Curtis to come back at another time. So I didn't know he was going to not be at the Cabinet either. So we do try and get portfolio holders there to speak to, but there was 2 able deputies and Mr. Burrell and Mr. Butterworth who gave a really good explanation of the strategy. What we do, obviously we were pretty supportive of the strategy, but we're asking for feedback, requested feedback how the budgets were spent, and what improvements to efficiency were being made, particularly in relation to the communication strategy. We were asking, was it going to be doing the same with less, or doing more with the same amount of resources? And quite unequivocally, Mr. Burrell and Mr. Butterworth said it was going to be more with the same resources. We mentioned AI, which obviously with artificial intelligence, many years ago it had a different meaning in the farming community, but we won't be going down there again. But it was certainly how it's I know it's it's quite a flippant point, but it's symptomatic how terminology changes, and so it is important that we do keep up with the new terminology and make sure people are aware of what's going on. One of the things we considered was encouraging staff initiatives, again to innovate and improve processes, because they are there on the front line and might see things that potentially senior managers don't see. So I think we also felt, we questioned whether the staff incentive scheme was still available as well. So, and again, the only other thing that we considered that council be mindful of residents who may not be online when digitalising, I can't say that one, processes. So I think, again, whilst there will always be the vast majority of people online, there will always be some people who won't be able to access such information. So we do need to be supportive of them. And again, it goes back to the previous point on the corporate plan period challenge, how we involve partners, particularly parishes and town councils who are probably closer to the residents than some of the districts and counties are. So I think, again, I think if that was on as part of that process as well, speaking to the partners, how we do engage with the residents who are not online or have difficulty accessing online sources, that would be helpful as well. But again, we were pretty supportive of the process. But again, we will be keeping an eye on it, and particularly around the people who may be slightly disadvantaged by this process as well.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to bring Councillor Coucher in, but that last point is one that I feel very strongly about, is making sure that it may be a smaller number of people, but there are always some people who are not able to be online for a variety of reasons, and that has certainly been taken into consideration. And it's one of the key points about the communication strategy as well. And it was one of the reasons why when we were requested by the library staff in certain towns to reinstate the customer access terminals, because people were asking for the ability to talk to staff, but with help from librarians at the same time, that we were happy to do so. I'll bring in Councillor Coucher.
This is a really, really important strategy. Clearly, IT, how we communicate and how we make the best use of digital is absolutely crucial for this council going forward. I think the point that I just wanted to clarify, I will want some more clarification, is really paragraph 5.2, 5.2.1 and 5.2.2. We're obviously making a substantial investment in this. It says the investment will be funded through a combination of existing budgets, external funding sources and efficiency savings. I think it would be very useful for this council to have much more detail about exactly where that money is coming from and how that statement is being supported.
Yeah, and the other thing that going forward is whenever we do, whatever we do in this area, and it is absolutely key that we improve the digital services, and I use the app which tells me which day they come to pick up my waste collection. I find it extremely useful, but we've also got to consider cybersecurity ongoing as we do this work, and I'm sure that is part and parcel of the work that will be done. Is there anything else anybody wants to raise at this point? And I'm looking forward to seeing the website enhanced. I really am. So we do now have a recommendation and the proposed digital strategy for the period 2024-29 in Appendix 1 be approved, and that the head of resources be authorised to implement the digital strategy, including the allocation of necessary resources, taking into account obviously the comment that has just been made. So are you happy for those recommendations? Who's going to propose and who's going to second that one? Councillor Grocott will propose it and Councillor Matt Rice will second it. Are you all in favour of taking that forward and getting that developed properly? Thank you. And now we move on to the communication strategy, and this is within the portfolio of Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Good communications are important for any organisation that deals with the public. This is especially true for a local authority like Stratford-on-Avon District Council that is committed to providing services for the whole community, including those residents that are vulnerable in different ways. Against a background of rapidly changing communications technology and residents' adoption of those changes, it's been clear for a little while that the Council needed to develop a communications strategy. This was noted by the recent Corporate Peer Challenge undertaken by the Local Government Association. But what has also been equally clear is that Stratford District is a very large rural area with a relatively elderly population. Therefore, any communications strategy must take this into account to ensure that less well-connected residents are not left behind. The communication strategy that I'm putting forward for approval today has been developed with these conflicting requirements in mind. It is an excellent document, I believe, and the result of a great deal of hard work by officers. The strategy takes into account 3 recent initiatives: a communications health check, again carried out by a local government association, parish council's communications survey, and an extensive resident survey. In essence, and to summarise, the resulting strategy says that the council will make more effort and intends to spend more money on direct communications, whether these be in print, by email, via social media, or by driving more use of the council's website. So this strategy embraces the challenge to build closer relationships with all of our residents, partner organisations, businesses and communities. It also emphasises that communications are a two-way process and that everyone should have an opportunity to have their say. One of the most striking results from the resident survey, carried out quite recently in June, was that only 44% of residents, that is out of 1,669 responses received, felt very well informed or quite well informed about the services provided by the council. Previous surveys had hovered at about the 60% mark, so this indicated a severe fall since the previous survey in 2022. This reduction almost directly correlates with the council ceasing to publish its printed View magazine, and which was distributed to every household in the district. It can be no coincidence that residents now feel less well informed as a result. It is recommended, therefore, that the council reintroduces the View printed magazine and allocates £80,000 from the council's Plan and Change programme to pay for producing and distributing 2 editions per year for the next 2 years. 2 other proposals arise out of this communication strategy, but they are not for consideration today. However, I will mention them. The council's social media presence has increased markedly since the recruitment last year on a short-term contract of a corporate communications officer. This officer has also launched a fortnightly e-newsletter called the Online View, which is rapidly growing in popularity and in the number of subscribers. This strategy requests that the post be made permanent as part of establishing the 2025-26 budget. And the second item is that resources for a temporary web editor position have already been approved by the Cabinet within the allocation for revamping the Council's website. So getting back to today's business, I propose that 2 recommendations are approved by this Cabinet: reinstating the View magazine by allocating a sum of £80,000 and approving this draft communication strategy for the years 2024 to 2028.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rice. Are you proposing that?
I am.
Yeah. And who would like to second that? Councillor Coles. And have we got any particular questions that anybody wants to raise? Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Councillor Junior. Yeah, we discussed this on Friday at OSC. Obviously, we're pretty supportive of the strategy and acknowledging the benefit of the paper publication and reaching residents who we've spoken about digitally earlier aren't online. OSC is keen to ensure that the money is being spent efficiently in the distribution of the View magazine, and we were quite supportive of engaging with parish councils to get the communication out to more residents. They might have different ways of doing so. Obviously, utilising AI and again other methods to optimise the website and social media channels. And after we've done all that, again investigating to see if there are any groups that are still harder to reach, which I think is fair and reasonable. Going back to the resident survey in 1.6, paragraph 1.6 on page 144, whilst I'm assured by Mr Purfield, who's done a massive report of 160 plus papers and knows it inside out, whilst 17% response rate to a resident survey is pretty good, I think OSC would like to see that in the 20% plus if possible. And again, we'd like to see back to the high 50s or early 60% well-informed residents in Stratford District. So again, we will be reviewing that to see how this goes. Obviously, Rome isn't built in a day and it takes a while to get momentum going, but I think if it could come back to oversee in 12 to 18 months to see how things are going and what improvements are and whether and how well the money is being spent. And obviously, within the 2025-26 budget, if these additional resources agreed, that could potentially make an effect. So, yeah, it's pretty good. And like I say, the resident survey to 10,000 residents was is explained by Mr Buckland and Mr Purfield that it was different to the norm. So again, we're trying to do things differently. So yeah, I think we are and are supportive, but we will be monitoring things again. So if we can improve the response rates to surveys and the survey to say how well informed residents are, if we can get that back to high 50s or to early 60s as previously, and again making sure we are trying to reach the groups that are still hard to reach. So thank you for that.
Thank you indeed. I'll bring the Chief Executive in, but one point that hadn't been mentioned is the way in which free newspapers no longer go across the district either. That used to be a key part where people would get information about the council, and it's also quite key how many people still will not use social media, and I can understand why. That there are reasons why we are in the position we are. I'm bringing in the Chief Executive at this point.
Thank you. Very brief comment. In presenting the report, the portfolio holder described the document as an excellent document. I absolutely agree with absolutely all of that. But I do want to just single out Bev and Helena for all of the work that they've done in producing this document for you to consider today. I think it will significantly enhance what the council does. Also, thanks to Ian Greener in our graphic design department for making it look and feel such a professional document. So I just want to pay tribute to Helena and Bev. Thank you.
And I'm happy to endorse that as well. Absolutely. So we've got a proposer and a seconder. Are you all in favour of the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. And we're moving on to issues arising from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Crump, have you got any issues that you want to raise?
Thank you. Yeah, we've talked about the cabinet ones on communication strategy, digital strategy, and corporate peer challenge review. We spoke about the substitute protocol for OSC, and Abe was supported by the monitoring officer and Mr Perks on this one. So OSC is requesting a report for the Audit and Standards Committee to consider implementing a substitute protocol for OSC and possibly the Audit and Standards Committee as well, outlining the constitutional changes that would be required and other implications. And again, this would then be referred on to full council for a decision. We did try and give the obviously the monitoring officer as much leeway as possible and flexibility as well on this. And timescale as well, because we know that it's quite a complex report. So it will be coming back to OSC for some review. And yeah, it's in light, on the whole, OSC didn't particularly have any problems with potential substitutes for it. Within certain parameters in terms of training, etc. So we didn't think there was the need for substitute protocol on task and finish groups, which are normally under remit of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We also discussed about a budget standing panel to review council finances throughout the year, which would be in line with good practice. And we got some agreement there will be a training session on council capital and revenue budgets to assist members to scrutinise the regular reports to cabinet. So yeah, we are looking at that, and again we think it's right that OSC does look at the budgets because it impacts on everything we do. And I think we do need a little bit more knowledge and work on how capital expenditure impacts on revenue, particularly if we have slippage. Obviously we are creating balances, and the balances can then be invested on the money markets to provide short-term cash flow and also interest. But once that money is spent, you know, there are implications on the budgets as well. So, and the only other thing we spoke about was the gypsy traveller, travelling show people and boat dwellers accommodation assessment, again, which rolls off the tongue, which is going to be part of the joint cabinet meeting on 21st of October between SDC and WEC. We were after some reassurance about the methodology, the information we've got that was being used. Some slight changes in methodology, but we were assured that the evidence was robust and would inform decision making that could stand up to any challenge and be vital for the South Warwickshire local plan. So that was the thing we were mainly concerned. We were doing this work and how long the information would be valid and credible for, and we got some reassurance that it would stand us in good stead for a couple of years as well. So I think that was important. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Crump. Anybody got any questions about the OV and Scrutiny Committee comments? No? In which case we'll move on to the Cabinet Committees. There were none to report on. And Part E is en bloc items, and there's nothing that has been communicated with me that no request has been made on that. And then the other items are all en bloc. The Climate Change Panel, the Stratford-on-Avon Market Forum, so we won't discuss those because they've been taken en bloc. And then finally, other matters, urgent business. I've not been notified of any urgent business, so I think that brings to the end this Cabinet meeting.